Hi, I'm Jim Mintert, Director of the Purdue Center for Commercial Agriculture. Thanks for joining us for a review of the December 2018 survey results from the Ag Economy Barometer. Near the middle of each month, we survey 400 agricultural producers across the nation, people that produce corn, wheat, soybeans, cotton, beef cattle, dairy cattle, or have a hog enterprise, regarding economic conditions on their farm operation. So let's review the results from this month's survey. The Ag Economy Barometer did decline in December relative to November to a reading of 127 versus 134 a month earlier. And that 127 reading puts us back to about where the barometer was a year earlier when it was reading at 126. If we decompose the barometer and look at the index of future expectations and index of current conditions, we see that they both declined. So both of those were driving the decline in the barometer. The index of future expectations dropped from 143 to 135, and the index of current conditions dropped from 115 to 109. But if you look at those two lines on your chart there for a little longer, you realize that there's a difference between those two. The index of current conditions is substantially below where it was this time last year, whereas the index of future expectations is actually pretty close to where it was this time last year. So producers are concerned about current conditions on their farm operations, but remain relatively optimistic about the long-term future with respect to their operations. One of the questions focuses on the advisability of making large investments in their farm operations, and that allows us to compute an index that we refer to as the Large Farm Investment Index. That index value did decline in December to a reading of 51 from 56 in November. Notice that that's still above our low, our all-time low of 42 established in late summer, but it leaves us well below where we were this time last year when the index had a reading of 70, indicating that producers are still cautious about making longer-term investments in their farm operation. Given the uncertainty about agricultural trade and the importance of agricultural exports to the U.S. ag economy, we continue to ask questions about people's perspective on ag exports over the next 5 years. And notice the difference between the results from November to December. Fewer people expected an increase in ag exports over the next 5 years, and importantly, a larger percentage, a move from 10% to 26% of the respondents, actually expect ag exports to decline over the next 5 years. So that probably explains some of the concern people have with respect to making longer-term investments in their farm operations. Another consideration from a longer-term perspective is whether or not now is a good time to have another generation join a family farming enterprise. We've asked this question each year for the last 3 years, and notice that in prior years it was pretty much evenly split between whether or not now is a good time or a bad time. This year we saw a deterioration. A larger percentage, 58% of the respondents indicated that now is not a good time to bring a new generation into their family's farming operation, whereas 42% said yes. So a deviation from prior years, a more negative perspective on that relative to prior years. When we ask the same question and ask people to look 5 years ahead into the future, we also saw a shift. People are more optimistic about the future and the likelihood of that being a good time to bring a new generation into a family farming operation than they were about the shorter term prospects. We also asked producers a little bit about what they thought was taking place in the livestock sector with respect to expansion and contraction. Of course, there's been a lot of negativity with respect to a lack of profitability and large losses accruing on dairy operations. An overwhelming percentage of our respondents expect to see the dairy herd contract in 2019, 83% of them expecting that, and just 17% expecting some expansion to take place in the U.S. dairy herd. We asked the same question with respect to the beef herd, and the responses were more mixed, but notice that compared to last year, for example, more people expect a contraction of the beef herd this year than they did a year ago, and fewer expect to see some expansion take place. Lots of interest with respect to investments in technology on farming operations. We chose the December survey as an opportunity to ask some questions about a specific technology, and that is the usage of drones or unmanned aerial vehicles on farm operations. Notice that when we asked, has a drone been used on your farm in the last year, 66% said no, 34% said they had, But that was in spite of the fact that only 13% of the farms reported that they owned a drone. So that indicates that a lot of drone usage is taking place from service providers. And in fact, when we asked that question, did a member of your staff use the drone or was it a service provider? Only 36% of respondents said that a member of their own farm staff was the one using the drone, whereas nearly 2/3 of the respondents on a farm where a drone had been used said it was from a service provider doing that for them. We asked what tasks those drones were used for, and we got very mixed responses. The number one response, of course, was field scouting. That was not a surprise, but the mixture of across the other responses, whether it be inspecting farm structures, field mapping, or using it for photos or video promotional items, was somewhat surprising to us. So overwhelmingly, field scouting was the number one usage, but a pretty broad mixture of uses beyond that. And then we asked, do you plan to purchase a drone or unmanned aerial vehicle in 2019? And overwhelmingly, the response was no. Just 6% of the respondents said they plan to purchase a drone in the upcoming year, indicating that if drone usage is going to expand, it's probably going to expand as a result of service providers providing more services that involve the use of a drone, as opposed to individual farms perhaps purchasing their own drones. That wraps up our discussion of this month's Ag Economy Barometer. Our next barometer will be released on February 5th. And of course, we'll have a new video as well as the Ag Economy Barometer report itself. You can get more details, including copies of all the charts, in addition to some additional charts that I didn't present today, at the Ag Barometer site, which is purdue.edu/agbarometer. Thanks for joining us.